Somewhere in Danish territorial waters, right now, a tanker is sailing without valid insurance, under a flag of convenience, carrying Russian crude oil worth millions of dollars, and there is almost nothing Denmark can legally do to stop it. The Baltic Sea has one exit. 8 countries depend on it, and the ships running it are getting older and more dangerous every year. The Danish Straits are 3 narrow passages connecting the Baltic Sea to the North Sea via the Kattegat and the Skagerrak. The 3 routes are the Øresund, just 4 kilometers wide at its narrowest. Between the Danish city of Helsingør and the Swedish city of Helsingborg, the Great Belt, which runs between the Danish islands of Zealand and Funen, and the largely unused Little Belt. Together they form the only maritime exit from the Baltic. There is no other way out. Finland, Sweden, Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Germany, and Denmark itself all depend on this funnel for seaborne trade. The Baltic accounts for around 16% of EU short sea shipping tonnage, with tens of millions of tons of grain, manufactured goods, fertilizer, and energy moving through it annually. There are no alternative deep water passages to the north or south. The Baltic is geographically sealed on every side except here. Over 70,000 vessels transit the Danish Straits each year. The legal regime governing all of this is even older than the Montreal Convention, and in some ways more binding. For more than 400 years, from 1429 to 1857, Denmark levied the sound dues on every ship passing through the Øresund. At their peak in the 16th and 17th centuries, those tolls accounted for up to 2/3 of Denmark's entire state income. Every vessel that refused to stop and pay faced cannon fire from both shores simultaneously. The Copenhagen Convention of 1857 ended all of that, signed after sustained pressure from Britain, Russia, Prussia, and the United States, who collectively paid Denmark 33.5 million rigsdaler as a one-time settlement. The convention committed Denmark to guarantee free and unimpeded passage to all merchant vessels, without detention or hindrance under any pretext whatsoever. That language is the constraint that defines today's crisis. Because running through these guaranteed passage lanes, almost daily, is what intelligence services and maritime watchdogs call the shadow fleet aging, under-insured, often flag-switching tankers carrying Russian crude oil under sanctions. In 2025, Danish maritime authorities recorded 292 transits by EU-sanctioned vessels linked to Russia's shadow fleet, nearly one every single day. At the peak in 2024, roughly 175 shadow tankers were transiting Danish waters every month, carrying an estimated $60 billion worth of Russian oil annually, representing around 40% of Russia's total seaborne exports. Shadow fleet traffic through the Straits surged 277% between 2022 and 2024 alone. By the first half of 2025, oil flows through the Danish Straits were running roughly 60% above 2021 levels, around 4.9 million barrels per day. Carried these ships route Russian and Kazakh barrels out of Baltic ports at Ust, Luga, and Primorsk through the Straits and into global markets in deliberate circumvention of the price cap and sanctions architecture the G7 spent 2 years constructing. The problem is not just economic, it is physical. By the end of 2024, the average age of shadow fleet tankers operating in the Baltic had climbed to 16.6 years, up from 8.9 years in 2021. Many lack verified insurance. Many have disabled AIS transponders, the vessel identification systems required under international maritime law. By August 2025, an estimated 1,140 shadow oil tankers were operating globally, representing more than 18% of the world's entire oil tanker fleet. In the Baltic, the numbers translate directly into accident risk. Analysts have modeled the cumulative probability of a significant spill event from this aging, uninsured fleet in Baltic waters at between 18 and 22% annually. The incidents have already started. In December 2024, the tanker Eventin, a shadow fleet vessel carrying nearly 100,000 tons of fuel oil, lost engine power and drifted off the German coast, triggering a Coast Guard emergency and forcing Germany to impound the ship. In April 2026, a Baltic Shadow Fleet tanker called Flora 1 was detained by Sweden after an oil spill was detected in its wake. By early 2026, at least 5 shadow tankers had leaked oil into European waters over the prior 12 months, and the pace was accelerating. Greenpeace has modeled what a full cargo spill from one large tanker in the central Baltic would look like due to the enclosed and relatively shallow nature of the sea. Pollution would reach all Baltic coastlines within days, causing what scientists describe as the region's worst environmental disaster since World War II. Despite this, attempts to close or significantly restrict the straits have stalled. Denmark has tightened port state controls, added insurance checks, stepped up inspections, carried in its 2026 Finance Act allocated dedicated funds for environmental ship inspectors to board anchored vessels. A joint statement from the Nordic Baltic States plus Germany and the United Kingdom in December 2024 pledged coordinated action against flag-less vessels. The EU has sanctioned 598 vessels, banning them from European ports and services. But outright denial of passage would violate the 1857 Convention, invite international legal challenges, and potentially escalate with Russia in a region already hosting NATO's expanded eastern flank. To understand why that matters, consider what the Baltic actually is. It is almost entirely enclosed, connected to the open North Sea only through these straits, with low salinity, shallow depths averaging around 5 meters, and very slow water exchange. Unlike the open ocean, where oil spills disperse over vast areas and are partly diluted by currents, a major spill in the central Baltic stays in the Baltic. The sea has no self-flushing mechanism at scale. Fishing industries, tourism, drinking water intakes, and some of the most ecologically sensitive marine habitats in Europe all share this enclosed body of water. 5 of the 8 littoral nations are NATO members. The environmental and strategic stakes of a catastrophic tanker accident here are not abstract projections. They are the predictable end point of a trend line that has been running in one direction since 2022. So the standoff continues with no resolution in sight. 8 nations, millions of tons of sanctioned cargo, a 160-year-old legal guarantee, and a fleet of aging tankers threading the world's most consequential enclosed sea. The Danish Straits are not famous the way Hormuz is famous. There are no gunboats at anchor and no headlines about closure. The crisis here is quieter and more patient, a slow accumulation of rust, opacity, and legal inertia. The most dangerous choke points are not always the ones that look like a weapon. Sometimes they look like a passage so old and so guaranteed that no one can bring themselves to close it.